Christians in America today has rejected God and turned their back on Him. Churches, first and foremost, they have turned their back on God. And now people have the question of, do you believe in God? And I look at people and I say, well, do you believe in me? And they're like, well, of course, you're right in front of me. Well, I try to tell them, if you reach out to God in truth and in honesty, and you want to know Him and experience Him, and you want to be indwelt by Him, you will experience Him, and then it won't be a matter of whether you believe in Him or not. It's kind of like, I believe in you because you just passed me. But people don't want to go that far. They don't want to believe that much, And they don't want to experience Him and have Him involved in their lives.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people in this country from one end to the other that aren't necessarily Christian, or maybe they don't even believe in God per se. Maybe they're considered pagan, or maybe they're agnostic or atheist or whatever. But they all see what's going on in this country, and they all are standing up and demanding the same thing that everybody is demanding. We want our freedoms back. We want our Constitution back the way it's supposed to be. Hands off our Constitution and get rid of that Emergency Powers Act and stop lying and cheating. Everybody across the country is starting to see it that way. It doesn't matter what they believe in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that people are starting to see that, and a lot of people are starting to cross the line who didn't see it before. One of the things I would say to you and if your audience is online, I would also say to them, is here's a test and a trial of whether God exists or not. You guys read. You can read it on Audible, through an audiobook. If you're driving, you can read it through a paperback, whatever you like. You read Jonathan Cahn's The Harbinger. And you take all of his prophetic fulfillments that America has been through, you read about them, and you put them to the test and Google search it, do deep research to confirm what he's saying is a lie or truth. So what I'm telling you is that Jonathan Cahn proves that Jesus Christ is Lord, and he proves the God of the Bible is the one true God, and that America is under judgment because of what they have done.
Yeah. One of my friends one of my viewers says, I can barely hear the caller. I guess I got to take the noise reduction off my microphone. Hang on a second. All right, go ahead and start talking. Let's see if my viewers can hear you better.
What I'd like to repeat to you guys is if you want to believe in something, if you want to put something to the test, if you don't want to believe in God because you just don't want it, that's fine. But if you want to believe in God, that you want to believe in a true God and a real God who manifests in power and in reality, then read Jonathan Cahn's The Harbinger. It's a New York Times best-selling book, sold millions of copies. He actually has the second copy called Harbinger 2 out. But read The Harbinger and take all of the prophetic fulfillment that he has in that book and put it to the test. Google search it and see if he is lying or not. You will find that he isn't lying. But there are examples that he uses where he creates hypothetical people and such for the storyline, but America is under judgment by God, and it's because we turned our back on him and walked away. We rejected him and told him we don't want anything to do with him, and the result has been America is under judgment, and Jonathan Cahn doesn't just write about it, he proves it. You can Google search his work, you can Google search through other sources, and just check his dates, his facts, and it's irrefutable.
Ladies and gentlemen, my little one-truck convoy across Colorado into Kansas here has turned into a two-truck convoy. That is a gentleman that is in a truck right behind me on the CB. Yeah, they can hear you now. looks like somebody dropped one of them big generator engines for one of them windmills up there.
The best and easiest way to perceive it is that there must be one root problem that causes all the others. There's a root cause. Get to the root of the issue and uproot that problem, and you fix the issue. And that is it.
Yeah, that guy, that oversized up there hauling that windmill, the part of that windmill there, he messed up pretty good up there, it looks like.
A lot of those, the rear end's controlled by the pilot car. I hope they're doing all right, but I don't know what happened. Maybe he drug his rear end over off the road or something.
It looked like that windmill part actually came off the trailer.
Oh boy. Yikes. I was in Windsor one day leaving, and one of those blades was coming out of an area of Windsor where they manufacture them, and he had a tight turn to make, and I watched him hit a light pole.
Yeah, all my viewers are telling me to tell you hello.
Tell your viewers all hello. I wish them all the best. I appreciate the audience time. I mean, I don't typically talk to people. I'm glad I'm kind of anonymous, but, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter if people know me. I believe in the one true God. And I met him and I knew him.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. The battery on one of my microphones died, so I just switched microphones.
My Savior, because he had rescued me out of the pit I had put myself in. And I'm seeing a lot more hurting people today. I'm seeing a lot more broken marriages where people, instead of just walking away, they're even taking a shot at each other, making sure that the last thing that they do makes that person hurt in agony. I had a friend nearly commit suicide. He almost died. I've got a lot of people I know that are hurting really bad, and they're not finding the answers from church, and they're not finding the answers from anything. What I'm telling you is that I had lost sight of the answer too, and the answer is God. But you got to believe in Jesus because he's the one true God. And a lot of people say, well, you know, there are many paths to heaven. And that's just not true. If you were God the Father and you sent your only Son to die to redeem, and then you had paid the ultimate price, then they had rejected you. And if they reject you, the freedom of choice to do that, but there's an ultimate price to pay. And I also want people to know that as I have found Christ and followed him, his servant, the more that I see he intervenes in my life, the more I see he controls bad circumstances, evil things work to my good. The more that I follow him and obey him and listen to him truly in dedication, as a servant who doesn't take off the servant's mantle, but as a servant who lays down his life just like Jesus did, sacrificially, day to day, doing his will, I find that he parts the waters and he makes unbelievable things happen in my life. I went from 5 years ago learning how to drive a truck to an experienced owner-operator with my own trucking authority and a 2-year-old semi that I bought brand new right when COVID happened and went down.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been out here doing this for a little over 25 years commercially, but I grew up on a small farm in the middle of southeastern Washington state, and you know, I've basically been driving a big truck since I was about 5 years old. Didn't matter whether it was on the farm just hauling the wheat seed or hay bales or something around, but you know, combines, tractors, all of it. And then I did my time in the Army, and when I got out of the Army, I came out here and started truck driving, and I've been running as an owner-operator for a little over 20 years now, I think.
Well, thank you for your service, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm just concerned when your generation quits trucking, and I mean, I could have been a trucker for 20 years, but I had a different path, but when our generation stops trucking, who's going to do the hauling, man? Who's going to do this and stay experienced? I mean, right now there's too many bad drivers out there.
Yeah. Now, my generation is only Generation X. I'm not actually that old. I've just been very busy and productive in my life, you know?
Oh, I'm not that old either. I was born in '84, but what I'm saying is that, you know, what are we going to do when the millennials are out there and that's what's left, you know? I mean, they don't even want to get out of bed. Nothing against some of you millennials. Some of you are hardworking, but I'm just saying, a lot of these millennials, the great resignation and the whole thing is because they don't want to work.
Most of them don't even know how to put down their Xbox controller.
Yeah, you're not kidding, man. You are not kidding.
Yeah, that's why I've worried so much about my children growing up in a big city where I am, but, you know, at least I can tell them and teach them the things that they need to know about our history and about the way this world really works versus what they're learning in school.
Oh, you're not kidding, brother. You are not kidding. They are editing the history book. If you watch the movie Expelled is a really, really good proof in the pudding kind of a documentary on how they've been editing our history and editing our textbooks for decades. That's a really good movie to watch.
Yes, it is.
Alright, I gotta know, what's your YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is Black Wölf. And over the O in Wolf, you have to have the 2 dots over the top, like the German umlaut.
I know.
There's there's a million different Black Wölf channels, but there's 2 of them that have the umlaut. One of them is my old channel that got stolen, and I have no access to it. And the new one, if you look at it, there's going to be a video that's titled #NoMoreThirdTerms, and third is actually spelled out as the number 3 RD. You know, the theft of my old channel happened recently, so I'm still rebuilding this channel now. YouTube wouldn't. YouTube said there was nothing they could do about it, and said that Google had to fix it. And I've tried to get a hold of Google so many times, and they do not reply. So I basically chalked it up to just completely losing that channel, because they got in there, they changed the password, they changed the phone number attached to it, they changed the email attached to it, and they even changed the recovery address email attached to it.
The reason they're not fixing it is probably because they did it. They don't want you to be posting this shit.
Yeah, right. Well, we know that they don't want conservative voices out there, and they definitely don't want people live streaming, because if it happens on a live stream while it's live, then there's no discounting it, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. It's all a cover-up.
Now, if you are between the ages of 26 and 41, you are a millennial, according to one of my viewers.
Yeah, that is a fact. I actually agree with that. I technically fall under the very beginning of the millennial generation, and I completely reject it. I have nothing to do with it. I worked in the oil field, $100 work week. I worked in landscaping. I've worked in trucking. I've worked my ass off for many, many, many years, my whole life. I had my first W-2 job at 15. I was mowing lawns before that at 12. I worked my ass off for my whole life.
Yeah, my thing is, you know, I'm a firm believer that even if they were millennials or even the generation after, if they grew up in a rural area, out on a farm or you know, just in a rural area, they're going to be hard workers and producers, and they're going to live a good, productive life. But the kids that are growing up inside the cities are the ones that they're the ones that are, you know, sitting there on their Xboxes all day, or going out and calling themselves Antifa and screwing stuff up. And they're the ones that are now sitting out there living in tents everywhere instead of actually being a part of society.
Yep, and the worst part of that problem is there's enough of them that they actually sway the whole voting base.
Yep.
The cities always dictate the vote. In these swing states where like Colorado, where they've eventually migrated over, you will always look, and if you look at the regions of the state, how they voted, you'll always see what you're talking about is confirmed. The rural areas are always hyper-conservative, but 4 or 5 cities have enough, you know, voting power to tell the whole state to go, you know, whatever they want them to be.
And it's funny how, was it 3, maybe 4 states in the whole country decide who the president is?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think your vote counts, I don't really know if my vote counts. I'm not trying to start a whole nother rat nest in that conversation, but I really lost faith in the electoral system these days.
Well, if you get to vote in person and you're not using the Dominion system, then your vote is actually counted. But if you're doing vote in by mail or or you're voting in person, but you have to do it on that Dominion computer thing. I'm pretty sure that it's you basically just threw your vote away.
Oh, you're not kidding. And I know people who have registered Democrats that have gotten more than one ballot, mail-in ballot, this last presidential term.
I know that. I got five ballots sent to me this last election season over there where I live, and the state I live in has been vote by mail for a long time, for many years, even before all this pandemic stuff, and it was just crazy. I filled out one and went and handed it in person, just to make sure it got to the right place so that it would be counted, and I even got a confirmation that it was counted. And then a couple weeks later another one showed up, and a couple weeks later another one showed up, and so on and so on and so on. I ended up getting like 5 or 6 of them.
Yep, and yep, that's exactly right. And a lot of that's where a person lives, their demographic.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm a registered Republican, even though I'm not even a Republican. I'm a constitutionalist.
I don't know what that's all about, but it's all messed up and busted as all get out. You are right about the Dominion system. I mean, that is, boy, that's about as rigged as you can get.
So the people want to know, where are you heading with that load?
Hauling to Tulsa this time, boys and girls. Hauling to Tulsa, and happy to go there. I really like going to Missouri a lot. Very conservative state. They believe in life, not death.
So you're going to Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Yes, sir. But I'm saying you're headed to Missouri, and I really like Missouri. I love heading freight out there. I love working with the people. Just that whole region. I like going to conservative places and staying there as best I can. So.
Yeah. When do you deliver? You delivering Friday or tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is Friday. You delivering Friday or Monday morning?
Tomorrow morning.
What do you got on the slate after that?
Going back home, sadly and happily, all at the same time. I don't really like my own state, but I do like my family.
Oh, we were just wondering because we've got that patriotic freedom picnic rally going on in Jefferson City, Missouri on Sunday morning between 11 and 4. And we've also got on Saturday, we're going to be doing the slow roll starting at 11 o'clock. It's a worldwide movement. Everywhere in the world, when your clock hits 11 a.m., you start slow rolling everywhere.
Okay, so it's for the time zone, slow rolling at 11, huh?
Yep, and that makes it so like if you live right close to where a time zone change is, you can start at 11 o'clock in your time zone, get to 12 o'clock, but then cross the line and start over again at 11 o'clock, so you get 2 hours, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to do it for the full hour, from 11 to 12.
Okay, I got you. That's cool. That's really cool. I like to hear it. Man, I wish I could come. That would have been fun, but I already booked one back, and I like to stay a man of my word.
Yep, that's the same reason that I'm out doing what I'm doing. Even when I was with the People's Convoy, I had to leave Washington, D.C. They hadn't even talked about going to California from D.C. Before, but I had to leave and go handle some stuff on the business side, and ever since then I've just been running freight pretty hard, trying to recoup from taking that couple of months' time out of my income earning by being with the People's Convoy in the first place.
Oh, buddy, I feel your pain. I know what you're talking about. I've been down for a month or two at once, and that's hard, but man, that's a worthy sacrifice to make in your case.
It's like right now, I had already made plans to be here in Missouri for this weekend, and I booked a load out of Seattle that went into. I had a load that was going to go from Salt Lake out to, but it canceled. So I ended up scrambling, and I was not able to find a load at all that went from Salt Lake area to anywhere near Missouri. So basically, from Salt Lake to Missouri, I'm on my own dime.
Oh, holy smokes, buddy. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's tough right now. I guess that's kind of a weird situation. I figured your hardship would have been finding a load out of Seattle these days. Seems like the state of Washington's got about 5 loads and 5,000 truckers fighting over them these days.
Yeah. No, I don't have a problem getting loads out of Seattle. I've got a contract. I've got a contract up there with a window and door manufacturer.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. You hauling monolithic glass, or what are you pulling? I've done monolithic before.
Yeah, we got monolithic and basically make everything. You know, it depends on it depends on what customers are ordering. You know, there was as a matter of fact last week I had to help their crew unload when I got over there in Salt Lake because there were like 30 of those giant 3 and 4, the 3 and 4 door wide sliding glass doors.
Oh, some of them are heavy too. Yeah, I like hauling glass, but one time, I don't know, there was an issue with a tempering or something like that. I think you're hauling a different type of freight.
Yeah, I know. There's times where it's just straight windows and doors that are already prefabbed, and there's other times where half the load will be these giant sheets of glass, and I'll tell you what, it's interesting how we angle them against the wall and you know, pad them up and protect them and strap them down in just a regular box trailer, because you know my trailer really isn't designed to haul glass the way that it should be, but we do get it set up just right for it.
Absolutely. Do they use those A-frame style things that you lean the glass against and pad it and then wrap it and then strap it to the wall or whatever, or you use a different system?
We kind of do that. We put plywood. We put a sheet of plywood in with some 2x4s and some cardboard, and then you know some of that bubble wrap around the important breakable edges. You know, but all of that stuff is loaded on with the glass as it comes on, and it's all loaded off when the glass comes off. You know. And it's just amazing how we're able to do that even without having a setup that's already in place to do it on an everyday basis.
I know what you mean, brother. First couple of loads I ran a monolithic, they were just nailing it to the floor and just about desperately doing whatever they could do to hold stuff down. Boy, that was not fun. Get out the crowbar and go to work on it, you know. But I got to ask you an off-topic question. What all other topics do you guys cover on that YouTube channel of yours?
We cover almost all topics on my channel. You know, I'm a firm believer that it doesn't matter if you think you're a left-sided politics, or if you're a right-sided politics, or if you belong to one religion or not, or a different religion, or if you don't believe in religion, or, you know, all the conversations. You know, I firmly believe that if everybody were to sit down and have a good conversation back and forth, we would find out that everybody seems to have a little more in common than they think they do. You know, just like a liberal may not actually be as liberal as they think they are. Because, yeah, okay, they're pro-abortion. You tell them about some of the crazy laws like what California just recently passed in regards to abortion. They're like, oh, no, I don't approve of that. But guess what? That means you're not a liberal then, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, most of us, I can't say all of us, most of us are all somewhere in the middle somewhere. It could be a pretty broad gap between one extreme to the other, so the middle's a wide space, but yeah, you're definitely got a point there, buddy.
Yeah, so I firmly believe if we all just sit down and have a good conversation, I don't care if somebody has a completely different view than what we are discussing in my channel at the time. If they come in with a completely opposite view, as long as they come in and have an intelligent conversation, there's always that moment where we're going to find some common ground. And I firmly believe the only way that we're going to turn this ship around and head this country back in the right direction is to all come together and find that common ground and use the common ground to move forward.
That is definitely true. One of the issues that we're dealing with is with the New World Order is, you know, they have to get around the idea that the United States is a superpower, and by doing that, they try to tear the country to pieces. And the best way to tear the country to pieces is to create lots and lots of fear porn on both sides of the aisle, tear people's relationships down, isolate people using COVID and other means, get them to the point where they feel like they have no social connections, which is the destruction of our society and our relationships. And when they tear down the relationships, when they create one side and pit it against the other side, it becomes an us versus them mentality, then all you're left with is dissension. And as we know, a country divided cannot stand.
Yep, united we stand, divided we fall. And they've done a really good job at making sure this country stays divided. From sexual ideologies to race issues to political issues to school issues to religion issues. You know, every aspect at spreading you into a dissent against everybody else but yourself. They want nobody to talk to each other, to get along or congregate or even be able to form an idea of their own anymore. They just want us to go to and just keep.
You're absolutely right. I think of one primary and division. People they don't think of it. I completely agree with you. What they do is they've created, for example, division between churches, a lot of churches, not all churches, but they've created division between the churches and homosexuality. So you've got one example of division. Well, I think it's wrong. Well, I also know that I'm a sinner, and that God rescued me from my sin, and I can honestly look at people and say, you know, just because you're homosexual or you're whatever you are, you know, I just look at you like God loves you, and I don't view it as some kind of homophobic, get away from me, you're different than me, whatever. It's more a matter of, you know, I recognize that we can agree to disagree sometimes, and that's okay. Hate each other, you know, that I'm going to be like, be gay, do whatever I'm not going to tell you. What I'm saying is I disagree. You, if you're homosexual and you're in the audience, would say you disagree with me. Well, that's fine. I don't care. I mean, like, I'm good with that. I'm not going to be all like, my world's ending and I hate you and everything like that. On the contrary, I appreciate that people were intended to have the freedom of choice. And that's what founded all of this. And God the Father, and God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit all gave us freedom of choice. And right now, the country is trying to paint the Christian church into a corner and say that they are homophobic and they don't agree with homosexuality. And that's true, they don't agree, but it doesn't mean I'm homophobic, and it doesn't mean that I want to kill homosexuals or I want to hurt homosexuals. I just want to disagree and be okay that we disagree. Be at peace with it. I got family that's homosexual, and they don't feel like I hate them. They don't feel like I'm against them. Maybe they do, but they never said that, and I don't ever want to intend to direct hatred or anything at them. I do disagree. I stand up against that, but, you know, I believe that you're free to be who you are and make your choices, and you'll bear the consequences of them just as I did, and, you know, whether that's a good consequence or a bad one.
Yeah, see, I look at it from kind of a military point of view. When you're all standing on the front line fighting the same fight together, you don't have to like the guy standing next to you. You may not like his politics, you may not like his ideologies, you may not like his religion. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. The fact is, you're both standing on the same front line fighting for the same thing.
Well, that's true, just as long as we don't lose sight of what we're fighting for.
That's right. See, I try to advocate for everybody to just drop their egos, drop their opinions, drop their preconceptions about this race or this religion or that religion or this ideology versus that one. Drop all of that and come together. You all want to keep your rights given to you by the Constitution, given to you by God. You all want to be able to prosper and live the American dream or achieve the American dream. And right now, with our country going the direction it's going with the people that are in charge, that's the wrong direction. And the people in this country need to wake up and come together regardless of any of their beliefs or opinions about other people. Put it all down, because everybody in this country wants the same thing. So they all need to figure out how to get past all of that ego stuff and move forward.
I completely agree. I think one of our biggest issues, and it all stems from what I was saying before, is that life is precious. Human life is precious. And the moment that you tell people that they evolved from monkeys is the moment that you convince them that life isn't precious, you start on that slippery slope. And one of the questions I have for people, for example, who believe in abortion, if you believe in abortion, but then you ask yourself, okay, how do they determine when a person goes to the emergency room whether or not they are dead or alive? It's usually three different ways. They check for brain waves if they're hooked up to a system. They have no brain waves, they check for a pulse or a heart rate. If there's no heart rate, somebody comes in there and declares the person to be dead, and a death certificate is signed. But yet, we don't honor that system within the human world. And that degrades what is precious, which is human life and human blood. And if you don't believe human life and human blood is precious, and that it is precious because a higher power said it is so, then all things and all rules and all expectations and all unity have been compromised. You've torn down the fabric of society because human life doesn't matter. And if human life doesn't matter, unity doesn't matter. All that matters is what I want, what I desire. Now, for those mothers that, have been raped or whatever, my saddest condolences. I would love to tell you that there are many, many families that cannot have children, and they would love to adopt your child. And what was done to you was the most awful, most horrific thing ever. And I think the man should be put to death. But I don't believe that you'll be happier just because you kill someone and we're told that you're not killing. And I pity you. I pity you if you've done that. I feel for you, and I feel like you've been lied to, and you've been convinced, and you've been sold a whole barrel of goods. And I feel for you, and I'm sad for you. There's no condemnation. I just feel for you. I feel like you're a hurting person, and you probably discovered that you hurt even more afterwards. But my hat's off to you. You got a hard road to hoe, and I pray that you feel the comfort and the love of Jesus all over your life, and that you find healing, and that you find restoration from what wickedness was done to you.
Yeah. See, the whole thing about abortion, it disturbs me, and it's, I believe that there are some situations where it is needed, like, if the mother is going to die if she tries to carry, if it's going to be, then that's a different story. It shouldn't be a revolving door used as the other real disturbing thing is, you take a look at where they put all these Planned Parenthoods all across the country, which is where the abortions are done. You take a look at where they put them all. Every one of them is in the lower income areas of town. All of them. You'll never find one sitting up in the rich hills.
Oh, you're exactly right. It's a targeting system, and the saddest part of it is that, when they're targeted, it's part of the whole. It's actually racism in and of itself. It's so sad, and it's so destructive. I've seen so many young women that are so unhappy after they do what they do. It's not me speaking from experience, obviously. It's just that I know that I followed a route that seemed right to me, and I ended up in an awful place. And I think a lot of these young women, I feel so bad for them. They end up in a place where they're not happy after it's all done. And I feel for them, and I'm not, again, if your audience has a person in there that's had an abortion, there is no condemnation. I just feel really bad for you, and I feel like you've been hurt. You've been hurt, and you need healing and love. You need a lot of love. So I don't know. I'm also not trying to be that chauvinistic guy trying to tell women. I'm just saying that if you believe that something that has the DNA, you want to follow the science, they determine that a human is human based upon its DNA. If you take the DNA sample off of what they call a fetus these days, you take that DNA, it will register as nothing but human. Biology will confirm that it is human and irrefutably human. Then you abort it, you find out you stopped a beating heart, or you stopped brain waves. So when you abort it, you stop the brainwave and you stop the beating heart, both of which are the criteria used to determine whether a person who is in, say, the emergency room is alive or dead. So a coroner would, admittedly, if they hadn't been brainwashed, admit that it was alive, that it was human, and now it's dead. And it wasn't killed in self-defense. It was killed because it was an inconvenience or whatever, depending on circumstance. I mean, it could be inconvenience, it could be a rape victim, it could be many, many different circumstances. Doesn't change the fact that a beating heart was stopped or a brainwave was stopped. And if you want to make the argument begin until it has a heartbeat or a brainwave, then you have even a single cell is life. Is a single and are confirmed to be alive, and it can be observed through microscopic viewing as well as through extraction of DNA, which is in the central nuclei of the cell. So you cannot refute that it is life and that its DNA has its origins in the human genetic code.
Yeah, one of my viewers, or actually I think it's he just said that it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all world for sure.
What I know is that my God is aware that there are many different circumstances that we all face, and that none of us fully understands what that other man or woman faces, but he does.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna tell you about an abortion bill that was just passed. I'm gonna have you guess which state. The bill is known as. Why is he doing that?
That's special ed driving right there, buddy.
At all.
Saying that guy didn't need to cut you off.
I was coming up, getting ready to pass him, and I didn't see that van. That's how close he was to him.
Oh, so you're right there, ass, and then jump out in front of people. Not you, of course. I'm talking about the other dude.
Yeah. But anyway, like I was saying, the bill, if you wanted to look it up, it's AB 2223. And after I tell you about it, then you can guess what state it's from. And they passed it, by the way. So you can read this bill. It's all about abortion. It has, and it doesn't really. It extends the ability to get an abortion out to a certain time or a certain term. But then, you know, during all of the stuff where it's actually talking about the abortion itself, it doesn't really tell you that they're allowing abortions up to 28 days after birth. It doesn't say anything about that, right? But then you get into the other part of the bill where it deals with the coroner. The coroner is now no longer allowed to investigate or autopsy an infant that is 28 days or younger as any kind of crime whatsoever. In other words, even though they didn't come out and say it in the abortion section of it, right there in the coroner section is where they literally just legalized abortion up to 28 days after birth. What state was that?
California.
Bingo.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of it. Breaks my heart, man. Breaks my heart. Could you imagine putting that's not an abortion. Even if you want to call it an abortion, that's not an abortion. That's an air-breathing human being. Truthfully, even a fetus, if you want to call it a fetus inside of a womb breathes air. It just receives the air through the mother's oxygen system, which goes into her. Oxygen is supplied through the placenta to the newborn or the infant, because newborns are still. But these infants, they receive oxygen through their mother. But, I mean, there is no difference between a fetus, if you want to call it.
Basically what they think the abortion. Hey, you know, that parent after it's later, you know, or 2 weeks later or a month later, you know, they're having a really baby won't shut up. Shake it till it stops. Well, now that's what it is. No part of that should be legal.
That's right. It's all murder. That's a fact. And the truth is that that again comes from that not respecting human life, and the blood is precious. Even in Genesis, the very first murder that was committed was Cain on Abel, and God approached Cain and said, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. And I think people have lost their fear of God and their respect of God. I think they have lost the recognition that blood cries out. And it says it in Revelations again, the beginning of the Bible and the end of the Bible. All will tell you that human blood, when taken unjustly, cries out to God for justice. And it will be redeemed and made just.
Can everybody on my live stream hear me just fine when I talk? Because I put the microphone up close to my CB so you can hear him.
I believe in self-defense, and I believe that God condones self-defense. I think you should be able to defend your family. But what I'm talking about is murder.
Yeah, a lot of people have different opinions on what actually classifies as a murder, you know. I mean, take for instance the situation where you're at home enjoying a dinner with your family and somebody busts into your house and starts, you know, pointing a gun at your kids. Well, if you turn around and pull your gun and shoot them and kill them right there, technically that's not murder, that's justification, right? There's people that think about it that way. But you know, when somebody's just out there senselessly ending a life for no reason, without having any reason to protect themselves against whoever it is they were ending, then that's murder.
Yeah, they just kill them because they want to, you're saying? Yeah, I agree. One of the things you'll find in society today is the most tricky tactic that the New World Order uses, as well as Satan, which are in cahoots. One of the trickiest tactics they use is the redefining of words. So, for example, a human being isn't a human being when it's in the womb, which doesn't make sense because it shares the same genetic code composition. It has brain waves and it has a heartbeat. It looks like, it smells like, it must be a human. Obviously, our deductive reasoning and our experience just through high school biology should be able to show us that that's a human. But yet, all we have to do is worship the god of Molech, which is abortion. All we have to do is believe that it's not a human being, and then we go, yeah, okay, all right, it's okay then. Oh, yeah, it's all right, we can go along with this. It's a blob of tissue. It's like a giant cyst on my back. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, whatever. And then we redefine the word. And then decades later, whole generations are born being taught that that's not a human, it's a fetus. When in reality, the only person that redefined that word was a whole bunch of medical doctors that could make a whole shitload of money off of us by performing abortion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's sad, you know, animals in this country today have more rights than children or unborn children.
Oh, that's a fact, brother. And the other thing that you teach people is you teach them they came from animals, and if they are animals, then they'll start acting like one.
Oh, you mean like those monkeys sitting on the hill over there in D.C.?
That's a great start right there. We can start right there. I like that.
I sure hope that full-grown stays sitting right where he's at.
Thinking the same thing. We usually do. Out here, these boys are pretty reasonable. I've never had a problem.
Well, I've never actually been pulled over in Kansas, but you know, I hope he gets to sit there and get a good nap in all day. You know what I mean? a lot of times these days they got too much violence being thrown at them nowadays.
Oh, you're not kidding, brother. A lot of those people, you know, I'm not talking about the rural so much, but a lot of those people are under a lot of fire these days. I feel for them, but one of the problems that you run into when you're under fire is that there's always going to be those bad eggs that rise to the surface. And those bad eggs give everybody a black eye. And the first thing that you've got to do to clean up an issue is start at your home base. Start with your own issues and work your way slowly outward. And some of those police departments really do need a little bit of house cleaning. And there's a lot of really great cops. I really support the blue, I really do. But they've got to remember that if you want to take the moral high ground, if you want to tell people how to live, if you want to be the example, you set the example first. The Bible's clear. If you want to get the speck of dust out of your brother's eye, you start with the plank in your own.
Yep.
So what I guess I'm really saying is even if you only have a speck of dust in your eye, get that out before you work on anybody else's eye. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all I'm saying is that we need to work on our own issues, personal, you know? As a truck driver, I need to make sure I'm operating clean, I'm operating fair, I'm driving hours, and then I can turn around and expect the same clean, fair, righteous living from the police officer that might give me a level 1. And I should thank him for the level 1 because then he owes it to me. If I behave in such a fashion, he owes it to me to give me a fair level 1.
Yeah. There are some places in this country where you're lucky if you get a fair level 1.
Oh, don't I know it?
Several years back on my old Kenworth that I had before this truck, I was going through California, getting ready to go up over the Grapevine into LA. Got pulled into that scale house. Guy gave me a full level 1, and I see him grab a wrench, the little bench there, and he gets on his little scooter thing and starts scooting around underneath my truck. And he didn't know I had a camera under there. He comes back up and he says, well, I gotta shut you down on your drive line. He goes and shows me, which didn't make I just had to be towed in not even a week prior and have my transmission replaced, which means, you know, they dropped my drive line and the whole 9 to tow me, and then they put it back together and torqued it down. There's no reason I should have been missing a bolt, right? Well, he comes up, deadlining me, doing all the paperwork, and then he comes up with this little list of only 5 local places that will come out and fix it on site that are allowed on the DOT grounds. And turns out only one of them would answer the phone, and that guy happens to be the officer's cousin, right? Push comes to shove. The person in charge of him, and I went and I showed, and they immediately corrected for shutting me down. Wrote me another ticket that said it was all fixed, even though I still had to pay the guy that came out and put a new bolt in my freaking drive line. Yeah, most people don't even realize it. You can't tell when you look around my truck. You can walk everywhere you want, but most God cameras pointed in every freaking. I built my own stupid little camera surveillance system on this thing, and I've got 2 cameras from 2 different directions. So you want to crawl under my truck and do some stuff, you're on camera.
You, man, I wish I had a setup like that.
Yeah, I built it so that, you know, it's got a little box here underneath the bunk that it records everything that comes into all the cameras. And not only is it recording it there on the hard drive, but it's also sending it. It's sending it through the cellular signal to my computer at home too.
Camera in his hard drive.
Violet the Lazy Texan, what heat are you talking about? Oh, I got one of my... Is that heater ever going to turn off? I think she might be referring to the sun. One of my viewers says, you know, growing up Catholic, that they were taught that life began at the time of conception. And that is true. Life does.
I agree. Absolutely. 100%. Irrefutably. With the life begins at conception argument isn't that the life, they're arguing that it's living tissue and it doesn't matter, which you know that's BS.
It's just like that one lady that's they did the interview. You can still find this little interview in places on YouTube and other places, you know. But they got this teacher. She's a grade school teacher, teaches the younger kids about, you know, teaching these kids about sex and stuff like that in school. And these ideologies about, you know, the pronoun stuff and the gay and lesbian and all, the whole nine, right? They're teaching these kids this, and she's so firmly believing that she even, the reporter asked her if she believed could become turned around and called a man can get pregnant, but biologically ain't nothing a doctor can ever do that'll make it so a man can be pregnant.
Well, even if they implanted a uterus in a man and impregnated from the uterus wouldn't be, and then he might even have contributed his own sperm to the egg that they implanted, which also isn't his DNA, but that's truly more of almost like an attempt at making an asexual, if you want to call that a creation. But even if they successfully did that, that is not a man giving birth. That is the genetic composition of a female in all of the organs that are female there. That is a female set of organs in its genetic DNA composition. It isn't from you. It didn't originate from you as a man. Therefore, you can't claim you got pregnant. And I think they did do an implant on a guy. I don't know how well it went, but anyway, that's just the weirdest stuff in the world.
Now, it's my understanding that that little experiment they were doing with to have a man be pregnant actually failed.
Good. The first thing I think of when I think of that is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's not about the sex change. It's not about altering the look of who you are. It's about involving another life in some kind of a bizarre abomination against its own will.
Yeah, it's just like I was taught in Sunday school when I was young. You know, Noah went through and put all the animals on the ark 2 by 2, male and female each, in order to save the species from the, you know, save the animals from the great flood, right? Well, then how did we get all of these other animals that kind of went extinct around that same time? Well, guess what? The explanation that was given was that people had been crossbreeding certain animals with other certain animals that would never naturally crossbreed to come up with these other abomination type animals, kind of like a liger, you know, a lion and a tiger mixed. Out in nature, a lion and a tiger would never mate with each other. They would never do that, right? Well, here we are in our day and age, and it's not just animals that people have been crossbreeding. They're trying to figure out how to change over everything in the human being too.
Actually, it's kind of a cover-up, but they've been tampering with the human genome. They've been tampering with our genetic code. They've been tampering with animal genetic codes, and they've been creating what's called chimeras in the lab for many, many years. Shoot of Dolly the Lamb and the cloning process, and as they started to realize they thought they could play God, they just kept heading down that path further and further, seeing if they can blend genetic code until they can create some kind of a monster. And indeed, that is exactly what they're going to do, and that is what they have done. I even heard an interesting fact. I don't know if this is actually a fact. It should be looked up. So if your audience wants to confirm it, that would be good. But I heard that Dolly the Lamb, after being cloned, its clone, actually, all of its genetic tissue, all of its cells, had the age of the original parent, which means that when they cloned it, it didn't start out as some new young lamb. It might have looked new and young, but it started out as a brand new life, if you want to call it that already was multiple years of its DNA.
So basically, it's like making a brand new copy of the original, which most likely shares all the same memories from the moment it was copied prior, and all the same experiences and everything, but now it's starting over again as a young one.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly how it pans out. I'm not a geneticist. I did study biology and science as well in school, loved it. But I don't have a degree in it or anything. But yeah, basically what you said sounds about kind of like a good layman's way of saying it.
I wouldn't doubt it. I really wouldn't doubt it, though. I mean, how much does man really, really know about every aspect of how the human works, especially when you talk about the human consciousness itself, or the brain? The doctors on this planet still haven't 100% mapped out the brain itself yet.
Well, that's exactly what I point out to people. Whether you're going to talk about the COVID and the jab argument, you're going to talk about sciences of any kind, the major point is that doctors have lost their humility, and the proof is in the pudding. They make a statement, and they call it fact. Well, let's rewind. Over the last 20 years, doctors alone, and their argument is based upon how many years of sample data that they have. Well, let me give you one to think about. Coffee and chicken eggs are both two things that we have hundreds of years of sample data. Just in modern science alone, we have, decades upon decades of sample data of whether or not coffee and chicken eggs are good for the human body. Yet, over the last 2 decades, they have flip-flopped from 2 completely different extremes multiple times, back and forth. They cannot decide if coffee is cancer preventative and good for the human body, or it's very bad for it. I just remember a release when I switched one of my careers probably 10 years ago. I was looking at it and I was like, wow. So now they're saying all along that coffee's bad for you, and now they're saying it's good for you. And then they come out and say it's bad for you, and then they say it's good for you. For a long time they were saying you shouldn't eat chicken eggs because the calories and the cholesterol within chicken eggs are bad. They're all good for you. They can't make up their mind. They don't know anything. They're testing. They have some observable results, but they have no proof of anything. They're trying to convince Americans. It doesn't work out. They just keep moving the goal. In all modern medicine, in all modern science, they just move the goalposts, and we're
just like I can remember when, you know, all of the commercial, you know, stuff telling you eggs are healthy. You need eggs for every breakfast. You need eggs in every meal. Saying that the egg whites were bad for you. Well, then they switched it around and said, no, it's not the egg whites that are bad for you. Bad for you. And now you don't know what to believe.
They can't get enough sample data out of coffee and eggs and the effects it has on the human body, then they try pays the most. I mean, look at the proof is in the pudding with Monsanto. I mean, whether you agree with Monsanto or not, there are many proven lawsuits against them that they're. Yet, Monsanto's in bed with the government, and so there's crackdown. People are like, oh, they paid millions and millions and millions of dollars in, lost court battles. And the truth is that these people don't understand the economies of scale. When you're dealing with a company the size of Monsanto, they consider that the cost of doing business. That doesn't even matter to them. They don't even blink an eye at millions. We're talking about a company that, when it's showing billions and billions, even in some companies' cases, billions and billions of dollars worth of revenue, people don't understand how those numbers work. And that's just their revenue. It's not the money coming in the back door, the hidden funds, the government spiffs, and all the talking about a serious corporation in the back pocket of the government. You're talking about most likely potentially trillions of dollars, which is a number that most people have a really difficult time wrapping their minds around.
Yeah, and it's a lot like some of these big companies out here. Take Swift Transportation, for instance, right? They get away with breaking the law when it comes to paying their drivers everything that they're supposed to be paid for so long. As a matter of fact, they still do a lot of that stuff that they got sued for and lost, simply because they're making way more money than it costs them for a lawsuit anyway.
Exactly. And the government winks the eye at them and everything's okay, and they pay their little slap on the wrist and they go on and smile and make even more money, and then a couple years go down the road and they're even deeper in the pockets of the government, or even further in bed with them, and have a better and better relationship with their old buddy scratch the back system. And before you know it, it just doesn't even matter anymore. The lawsuits are just like a tiny little drop of water in a sea of problems.
That's just like you take a look at Google. Google has been sued how many times now and lost because they are storing everybody's information. Every bit of information that has Google on it whatsoever, they have complete access to your microphone and your camera on your cell phones if you have an Android. and all your computers and everything. They have access to all of it. Everything, every keystroke you make, everything. Even if you're sitting completely across the house from your phone and it can hear you, Google has a copy of it. And Google has been sued for it many times and lost every time, but it doesn't stop them from doing it because they're making so much more money, they don't care.
Well, that's just it. And if the judicial system won't shut them down permanently, then there's no real repercussion that would matter to them. I mean, truthfully, Google has government contracts. Google has relationships with the government. So, I mean, Google throws their weight around in so many ways people don't even fathom. I mean, Google is undoubtedly involved in many, many different top secret government operations. They're providing software engineering and all these different things to the government. So it's like even Google Earth hiding some of the imagery that they had because they didn't want, you know, that information to go fall into the hands of terrorists or whatever like that. So they blur out certain regions. Really what's going on is Google and the government are in cahoots just doing surveillance, and that's just one example. But I mean, there's 1,000 different ways. I am sure Google is in bed with the government, and they work together. They have their contracts, other company names and other hidden corporations, and they pass through the money and they launder it to back and forth it goes, and they wink. I think we found the issue because the company gets busted, and the company was just another shell corporation, and it just falls apart, and there's nothing left there, and there's one idiot that they intended to be left behind holding the buck, and he's usually not even the guy, you know?
Yeah, and what's really sad is most people in the world don't even know that Google is embedded in almost everything. Every device out there that has an Android-based system whatsoever is all Google. Google owns Android. And it's like the last lawsuit that I heard about that Google was involved in was because there was a hostage situation that ended up in a multiple murder suicide. The guy had taken family and locked them all up, wife, and he was torturing and then started killing them himself. And the parents of both sides of that family sued Google because it came out that there were people actually listening, actively listening and watching through one of the cell phones that happened to be in the house as it happened, and they didn't bother to pick up the phone and call the cops. And yet Google still does that, even though they claim nobody's listening, they are.
So then you gotta ask yourself, if you were that guy sitting in the computer watching somebody get tortured and murdered, and you did nothing about it, how awful, how dark would you have to be in your mind, how seared would your conscience have to be to get to the point where you could watch all of that and not really do anything about it, you know?
Right. You know, the other thing is, if for the people that want to say, well, they wouldn't have known where these people are. I'm sorry, but Google knows the exact GPS location right down to within 10 inches or less of every single device that has their Google stuff on it in the first place.
Oh, they know exactly where you're at all the time. How it tracks you with perfection. And, yep, you're right. There's really no excuse. There's no argument. But there's always going to be those people that want to just make a comment that sweeps it under the rug. And truthfully, the other problem that America has is America's asleep. America's asleep. We've been drugged in many ways. We've been, you know, we have our vices and we have all of our little things. And as long as we're getting what we want, we don't really care about the injustices done to others until it starts affecting us. Well, people, I got a warning to you, because eventually it's going to catch up to you. It's going to affect you. But by then it'll be too late, way too late to do anything about it. You're just so far beyond far gone, there's not even a discussion. By the time you look up and realize it's destroying your life and affecting you heavily, party's over, guys. Your rights and your freedoms and your liberties, your peace and your joy, and everything that was worth fighting for will be over.
If anybody wants to know, because some people are out there saying you can't get away from Google. Yes, you can. You can get away from Google very easily. Very easily. You can run, if you're using a computer or a laptop, you can delete everything on the hard drive and then reinstall like a Linux operating system or a Safari operating system. If you have cell phones or tablets, you can switch them over to Apple-based products because Apple does not record all that crap. Yes, they have Siri, and Siri is actively listening to you, but she's only actively listening for the keyword of her name in a combination with, hey or hello. That's the only time she becomes actually active and listens to what you have to say. She doesn't record it either. And that's because Steve Jobs made sure to embed in the program that she could not be actively listening and recording for anything other than that, except when you trigger her.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That's very interesting. I am aware of Linux. For those of you who are interested in operating with Linux, make sure that you go to YouTube and learn how to download a copy and create a disk. It's called a live CD or a live USB flash drive. You can create a live drive. I recommend Linux Mint. Linux Mint is a really excellent operating system. It's very stable. A lot of people are going to have to get used to Microsoft Word. If you are used to operating on the old versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint and all, and you install them via disk onto Windows, you can actually get around that now by running Office 360 through the browser on Linux. There's almost nothing you can't do on Linux anymore. The technology is so advanced. I use Linux and I access everything. I can download and hook up my phone to my Linux operating system, and I can transfer files. Mint is a really good stable platform. I do recommend, they also have flavors, and I do recommend Linux Mint Cinnamon. Get the latest edition of it, unless your system requires otherwise. It's pretty much plug and play. You just have a few things you have to do when you're installing the operating system. And always remember, anytime you install an operating system, you're going to reformat your hard drive. So everything you don't save from the previous format is completely gone for eternity.
Yep. And Linux is a free operating system, as opposed to if you had to go out and buy Windows 10 right now, or the newest version of Windows, you're paying $800-900 for that. You don't have to pay a thing for Linux, and it's a completely open source system. So there's always people out there tinkering around with it and coming up with better ways for this or that to work, and coming up with new, better programs, because everybody out there can do that themselves now under an open source program versus a program that some company has locked down under their thumb. And yes, you can completely get away from Google. I have done it. I've gotten completely away from Google in almost every aspect except for YouTube, because YouTube is owned by Google.
That's operating on the assumption that we have secrets, sir. The point is the principle of the matter. If you like them violating your freedoms, your privacy, and your rights, when you pay for your phone service, and you pay for the operating system, and you pay for the phone, and you still don't have a problem with them violating your rights, not only that, but they also eat up the bandwidth of the device by stealing your information. When they steal your information, they're using your data connection to steal it. And when they take it away, it's also using your battery, which is consuming battery life and reducing the life value of your phone, which then makes you go and buy a new phone every 2 years instead of what it should be 5 or 6 years. They're basically consuming the quality of life that you live.
Right. When you look at an Apple phone, like an iPhone, I have an iPhone 3 out there. It works just fine as a cell phone and media device. handheld media device and everything in your hands. It hasn't degraded. It hasn't gotten slower. Maybe you had to replace a battery. Okay, no big deal. But you take a look at everything on the Android side, and you're lucky to get a phone that lasts you more than a year. And that is because it's not necessarily about the product itself being not so good to last that long. It's about the programming, and it's about how much they're forcing up and down on it just to steal your information in the first place. You wonder why an Android has constantly got this update, this update, this update, update. Well, what they're doing is they're slowly turning. You got a brand new phone today, and in 3 months you start getting updates like mad. Well, those updates are sitting there, and they are actually degrading your phone. They are literally making your phone work itself harder on purpose so that it wears out faster so that you have to buy a new phone. That's their game. And those iPhones, they don't do that. iPhone doesn't do that. Every once in a while you get a new operating system update. That's about it. And that operating system update is solely in the operating system itself. It doesn't actually do any degradation of all the different things on your phone.
I got a word for that other driver. There's another thing that's occurred that you may not be aware of, is that anytime you have the government collecting information, you think of it as an organization collecting information, which it is. And I may not have anything to hide, and there's a lot of people that probably don't have anything to hide. But the point is that there's somebody collecting your private, personally identifiable information. It's called PII. And at the other end of that computer is an individual. And it isn't the first time that the government or private contractors like Google have stolen your PII and had an employee get absconded with your information, and you get identity thefts because of it. You have the people within government and within corporations stealing our information. So you text your wife your social security card or the front of your driver's license. Suddenly Google has it. Well, a Google employee has access to that information. Well, then they create a fake ID, or maybe it's your credit card. Then they steal your credit card. Suddenly you find out that there's an American Airlines flight going from Southern California and Google out to Washington State, and it's just some Google employee that's jacked your data. People who work for government and people who work for large corporations are just as prone to and apt to steal your private information as anybody is, because they're people.
Exactly.
Yes, I have. I've had my identity stolen multiple times. The source and the means of which they used is mysterious to me, but I have had my credit card stolen, I've had my identity stolen, I've had my father lose his social security card, and he hardly even uses the web. I've had many, many, many different cases of identity theft just in my family alone.
I think almost everybody in the country has experienced identity theft at some point now. The last time I got hit with it, some Hispanic guy down in Arizona was using my bank card somehow, even though I had my bank card in my possession, and I was in Pennsylvania at the time. He was in it's a four-wheel truck shop, buying like a lift kit or something, like $7,000 worth of stuff in this shop with my bank card. And I was lucky enough to catch it as it came through that day, because I got an alert on my phone that so much money had just been processed through, and it was above my little identifying marker that I have set. A certain amount of money. If a certain amount of money is spent, I need to be notified, right? So, come to find out, it's a Hispanic guy down there using my ID, using my bank card, and making a purchase out of my bank account for truck parts. Like a pickup truck, to lift a pickup truck up or something,
Absolutely. The other factor to take into account is, even if Google isn't misusing your information in any way, even if everybody who works for Google is pure as the driven snow, and they're just the most golden person with a little halo over their head that ever lived. Every single employee. Regardless of that, there's a principle that most people don't understand that hackers comprehend. Hackers understand that anytime you have a tech company gathering information, the more information that is present in one location represents what's called a honeypot. And when they create what's called a honeypot, it means that there's a data source that is greater than all others that makes it a greater reward when they get hacked. Look at Home Depot. Home Depot got hacked a couple of years ago, and they were collecting and storing credit card data they weren't supposed to be collecting and storing. It created a massive honeypot. They got hacked, and now they're dealing with the repercussions of it. Gathering people's personally identifiable information and their private data is evil and it's wrong. It isn't your right, and you're causing them issues later on, whether you believe it or not. For example, a hard drive can be cloned and copied and all the information on you they want, then that means anybody's collecting your info.
The fact remains they're still violating your privacy just by storing all of that in the first place.
Exactly. One of the things people don't understand is there's multiple types of hacks. And one of the types of hacks that most people don't comprehend is that while Google's gathering your information, and they may even keep your information safe, there's ways of gathering that information midstream while it's being transmitted, where Google didn't compromise you, but the people are in the midstream section of the data being transferred across phone lines, across, the cell phone network, across cable. They're collecting your information because of your IP address, and it's all because Google is sending that information to.
Have a good day, Violet.
What I'm saying is that Google's collecting that information to themselves, and that information is being intercepted midstream.
I'm talking to another semi-truck driver that is now convoying with me through Kansas. He's right behind me in a big purple Kenworth. And we're on the CB together. For these people here.
Pee-wee. Call me Pee-wee.
Did you say Pee-wee?
Yeah, brother. It's an old childhood nickname.
That's not short for Pee-wee Herman, is it?
No. No, I'm not a pervert. No, I may have struggled with pornography in my past, but I am not a pervert like that.
Well, everybody's saying welcome to the family, Pee-wee.
Thank you. Tell them all. I really appreciate it. Man, it's been good talking to you, too. I love having a good, long conversation. I mean, I'll keep it going as long as you like.
Well, I know you got to turn off and head towards Tulsa. Where are you taking your turn?
I'm going down Wichita.
So you're gonna what on 135?
Yes, sir.
Because I'm actually gonna head down and try to arrive in Springfield by tomorrow morning.
Okay, well, it's gonna be a long. How many followers you got?
Now, I had an old channel got shut down, and I was up over right around 20,000 subscribers with that one. YouTube shut that one down because they didn't like my political voice right around the time of the last one. And then the new channel, it was up to it. I had just crossed over. And that's when they stole my channel. So now this channel here, I think I'm up to about 300 or 400 subscribers, something like that. Let me go take a look real quick.